So you just wrote a big check to the IRS, or perhaps you're one of the lucky ones. You're actually getting a refund. Well, have you ever thought of how much taxes actually eat into your investment returns? Stay tuned to this week's episode of the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. Welcome to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm David Scranton, here with my good friend and co-host, Sarah Samuels. And today, we're talking about one of your least favorite topics, and that is taxes. But the good news is we're approaching it from a standpoint of how you can have taxes work in your favor to exponentially increase the return on your investment. So specifically, we're going to talk about the two important components of tax deferral and the benefits of getting tax deferral on your investments, and also consider when perhaps you might have too much money in tax-deferred investments and not enough on the taxable side.
This is a really timely topic, Dave, especially with tax day just a few days ago. And
Right.
A lot of our listeners out there, and thank you for joining us on Retirement Income Source, but I think a lot of our listeners out there are thinking, Dave, I'm paying too much in taxes. I'm not happy about this. I just had to write a big check to the IRS. So they are probably very interested in learning about different ways that they can actually defer those taxes and keep more of their investments.
Yeah, I know. Last weekend's show, you seemed like you were in a pretty good mood. And did I hide the fact that I was really grouchy? Was I okay? Did you pick up on that?
Oh, no, I actually didn't notice. Usually you're pretty obvious if you're in a bad mood.
I was one of the check writers, so I was actually in a pretty bad mood.
Oh, you were one of those,
I was one of those, but that's okay. That's okay. We got past it. We survived, and you could tell I'm not angry about it anymore. But it's tax deferral is really like the eighth wonder of the world. It's one of the most powerful creations, because it's not about what you make on your investments, it's what you keep. And Sarah, tax deferral has two different components, right? First of all, it's a tax deferral on your interest, so that instead of having to take some money out every year to pay taxes on the interest you earned, and therefore your money grows more slowly, now your money gets to grow at its full speed because there's no drag against it, right? So think about it. You're out on the weekend. You guys are riding a tandem bike, right? And you're in front and you're pedaling. Right?
All right, I've seen those tandem bikes before.
Right.
I'm trying to get my head around it.
Exactly. And somebody behind you is dragging their foot on the ground instead of pedaling, right? They're creating drag.
Right. Now my bike's going to go slower.
That's what taxes do to an investment, right?
Right.
But if both of you are pedaling, or at least one person's not dragging their feet, now you can go a lot faster. So the first component of tax deferral is tax deferral on that interest and dividends on the growth. And the second one, Sarah, is the ability to make pre-tax contributions. The fact that when you put money into, let's say, a 401k, that you're putting money in, but essentially the IRS is matching you because now you have less tax withholding. And those two put together, and I've created an example for you, Sarah, based upon your age and your situation, so you're going to be surprised to see how significant the benefits of tax deferral could be just for you.
Perfect. Well, Dave, before we get to that specific example for me, I want to get to one of our Ask Dave questions. So we have Aaron from Nevada. He says, I am maxing out my pre-tax contributions in my 401k, but I was planning on putting extra in post-tax. Should I put in that extra if I'm not getting benefits from it?
Well, Aaron, great question. And the answer is most likely yes. And I don't know your situation specifically, but you still are getting some benefits from it, because even if you're putting money in post-tax, you're still getting tax deferral on the interest and the gains from year to year. So you're not getting the tax break up front, which is the thing that's probably most obvious for you, right? When you put that money in the 401k, if you're maxing it out and you're doing, let's say, $25,000 a year, you didn't reduce your take-home pay by $25,000 a year. You probably only reduced it by $16,000 or $17,000. That's obvious. But the less obvious, but equally as important benefit is the deferral on all the interest and gains from year to year. And when you go to retire and you go to roll that 401k money over to an IRA, because that's what most people do when they retire, because, Aaron, if you're a regular listener to the show, you know that most 401ks have more growth-oriented options. They're good accumulation tools, but they're usually not good income-generating tools. So when you go to roll it over to an IRA, you take all that pre-tax money, along with the deferred interest and gain on the pre-tax money, you roll it over to an IRA, tax-free. But what you also get to do is on that after-tax money, you get to take all of the deferred interest and gain on that after-tax money and roll that over tax-free also to an IRA. And then, get this, Aaron, your after-tax contributions, just your contributions are after-tax, you then get to roll that over to a Roth IRA so that can grow tax-free. Or, in most plans, you get to withdraw that money tax-free if you plan to buy a new car or something when you retire, or you need a lump sum of money. So yes, there's still benefits to it, even though you're not getting the immediate benefit of having before tax contributions.
Aaron, I hope that helps answer your question. And thank you so much for sending in your Ask Dave email. If any of our listeners have a retirement question that you would like Dave to answer, potentially on a future show, all you have to do is send us an email to askdave@retirementincomesource.com. You're listening to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm Sarah Samuels here with David Scranton, and we are talking about taxes. Now, don't change the channel, because what we're talking about is ways that you can use tax deferral to your advantage to actually grow your investments. And Dave, just a few minutes ago, you were talking about a specific example for someone maybe younger than our average listener that has about 30 years or so of growth. And you were going to explain how you can really maximize a tax deferral.
No, that wasn't someone, Sarah. That was you.
Or me specifically.
That was you, yes.
Or any of our listeners out there, 30 years.
That's right. Since we get to spend time with each other each and every weekend, I thought it was the least I could do.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it. A custom example for me.
So if you put $5,000 a year away for 30 years, now for some of you might be thinking, gosh, I'm not saving money for 30 years. I'm not as young as Sarah. For those of you who know, Sarah's in her early 30s. But so the benefits of tax deferral may not be as great for you, but I'm just using this example for Sarah because she has 30 years to go. So bear with me here. So Sarah, you put $5,000 a year away for 30 years. That means you would have put away $150,000 total, correct?
Correct.
Okay. If you just use regular taxable investments, you have any idea how much money you'll have after 30 years?
Nope. That's why you're the financial advisor, Dave.
You'll have $360,000, assuming it grows at 8%.
Okay.
So your 150 of cumulative investment grew to 360, more than double, which isn't bad, right?
That's pretty good. Pretty good.
Okay. But now, what if you got tax deferral on your interest and gains? Let's say you did an index fund that didn't distribute any gains periodically, as opposed to a mutual fund, or let's say you did an annuity, right?
Okay.
And you still used after-tax dollars going in, but now it grew tax deferred. Now, instead of that 150 growing to 360, it would have grown to 560.
Wow.
560. So you got an extra. You got 200. Let's see. You got an extra 200,000 of interest because you got tax deferral on your interest and gains from year to year, and then now, what if you did pre-tax contributions?
How high can it go, Dave?
Well, if you had pre-tax contributions like our 401k, which I know you're doing,
right,
you'd be up to $810,000.
Wow, and that's starting with my $150,000 initial investment over 30 years, right?
So 150 grows to 360 with all the taxes. You get an extra 200,000 over that. It goes to 560 if you defer the taxes on your interest and gains, and you get 250 more than that. That means it goes to 810 if you get to do pre-tax contributions and you get to defer the interest and gains. So essentially, by having all those tax levers put together, now instead of having about $200,000 of growth, you end up with about $650,000 of growth.
Wow.
Pretty impressive.
That's the power of tax deferral, right?
The power of tax deferral. And you know what? It can work for you, too, even if you're not as young as the lovely Sarah Samuels right next to me here. But stay tuned, because we have a lot more coming about the benefits of tax deferral, other ways that you can get tax deferral, and also how to tell if you're too lopsided in tax-deferred items. And you might be thinking, well, how could that be possible? Well, stay tuned. You're listening to Retirement Income Source. I'm David Scranton here with Sarah Samuels, and yes, it's all about the income.
You're listening to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm Sarah Samuels here with David Scranton, and we are talking about tax deferral and the true power of using tax deferral to make sure that you're keeping the majority of your investments. So a few minutes ago, Dave, you gave a specific example, a custom example just for me. Thank you. I appreciate it. But in that example, you talked about how I could start with $150,000. I'm sorry, start with $5,000, invest it over the next 30 years. So we have $150,000. $150,000 or so. Then if we say, let's say 8% growth, normally in the market gets us to about 360,000 from that 150.
If you're all taxable investments, that's right. So you have to pay the taxes out of the investment fund every year on the gains.
Right.
But you still more than doubled your money.
Right. And then let's say that we defer all the taxes on the gains, and then we're able to get up to around $550,000 or so.
That's right, on the gains each year,
absolutely.
Correct?
Now, we can get all the way up to $800,000 using pre-tax contributions with that amount. So we went from $150,000 to $800,000.
Because you don't pay taxes on the interest and gains from year to year, nor do you have to pay taxes on your contributions. Correct. You get
So this
two
is all
tax
legal.
levers.
You don't have to pay these taxes. It sounds like we're getting away with something here.
Well, not so fast. You do ultimately you have to pay
you
the
have to
piper.
pay the piper
so at some point,
eventually.
they're going to want their taxes. That's correct.
Absolutely. Okay. But overall, this example here just shows, and for someone like me that has 30 years or more to grow their account, just the power of tax deferral, how you can actually get that much money
That's
overall.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
And a lot of people feel like, well, gosh, that's great, Dave, but I still have to pay taxes on that $800,000. So what am I going to have left? $500,000 after all is said and done?
Right, especially when it comes time for retirement.
That's right. That's right. And see, that's not the case because let me ask you, you retire, you going to cash out your 401k all at once?
No, absolutely not.
No.
Yeah,
So
doesn't make sense.
So now you have a choice. In taxable investments, you'd have $360,000 generating income. And if it's generating income at 5%, it'll give you $18,000 a year.
Which is pretty good.
Not
That's
bad.
the income. That's like the paycheck that you get from your job.
Right, but if you have $800,000 at 5%, it's giving you $40,000 a year.
Yeah, that's even better.
So not only do you still get deferral in retirement on that tax money, but moreover, now when you're taking income, you have more than twice as much money generating that income. So it works really, really well for investors, for pools of money that investors are going to use to generate income down the road.
Yep. And we're all about helping you generate income, of course. That's why we call the show Retirement Income Source, because a lot of people don't realize just how important it is, especially in retirement. But let's get into our Ask Dave question. So we have this question from Daryl in Oklahoma. He says, I have a Roth 401k option. Should I use it?
Well, Daryl, it depends. And it depends upon how balanced you are between all that pre-tax money versus tax-free money. Remember I said a moment ago that pre-tax money is beneficial for people who want to take income, right? Because now you've made pre-tax contributions such as in a 401k, you've got tax-deferred growth on your income, on your growth every year. So you paid no taxes on any of that money. And in Sarah's example, she ended up with over $800,000 30 years later, right? But now as you take that income's taxable, that $40,000 a year I mentioned. But what if, Daryl, you needed to buy a car and needed to withdraw $50,000 from that account? Well, you'd have to withdraw about $75,000, depending upon your tax bracket, to get $50,000 after tax to buy the car. So those pre-tax accounts are great tools to generate income down the road in retirement, but they're terrible tools for lump sum goals. So the question as to whether you should be doing Roth IRAs or not is really dependent upon two things. The second and least important thing is you think tax rates are going up or going down, right? Because most people think they're going up. And if you saved a lot of money and you think they're going up, well, then maybe, gosh, you might defer all the taxes and end up withdrawing money down the road from a 401k in a higher bracket. So that's a secondary issue as to why you may want to do some Roth IRA contributions where you're putting after-tax money in, but all the distributions down the road are tax-free. That's a secondary reason. But even then, if tax brackets go up a little, you're still probably better off because, again, with that $800,000 in my example, that's all that extra money kicking off income, right? However, the biggest time you should consider the Roth is if most of your money is in pre-tax instruments, the 401ks, pre-tax contributions, tax-deferred interest and dividends, where you've kind of sort of overfunded your retirement. Nice problem to have, Daryl, but you've overfunded your retirement, and now you're thinking, gosh, what if I do want to take some money out to buy a car in retirement, or maybe an RV, or maybe a second home? Now that's a good reason to focus on the Roth 401k instead.
Daryl, we hope that helps answer your question, and thank you for sending in your Ask Dave question. If any of our listeners or our YouTube viewers have a question that you want to ask Dave, all you have to do is send us an email to askdave@retirementincomesource. That's SOURCE.com. Thank you for listening to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm Sarah Samuels here with David Scranton, and we are talking about different ways that you can help conserve more of your income, especially when it comes to paying the taxes on those investments. So, Dave, you just answered a question from Daryl, who was asking about a Roth option and the 401k. And I know that in our company 401k, we actually do have this Roth feature in there.
Mm-hmm. And the Roth feature is good. Some people think it's just about, gosh, if tax brackets are going to go up, I'm better off with the Roth. But that's really not true, because if you make the Roth contribution, essentially, in your example, you've got that $560,000. You don't have the 809.
Yep.
So even if taxes go up, you've got 560,000 that's generating tax-free income versus over 800,000 that's generating taxable income. So in retirement, that means that you need to be in a bracket that's at least 30% in that example to make a difference. And brackets may go up, but you may not find yourself in the 30% bracket. A lot of people don't realize it, but that if you're a married couple filing jointly, right now you have to make over $100,000 to get out of the 12% bracket. And the next bracket up is currently 22%. So yes, tax brackets will likely go up in the future. I agree. The national debt is out of control. But is it going to go up to 30%, where it makes that pre-tax contribution non-beneficial? So it's not just about taxes going up. Yeah. And Sarah, that's why I said that's a secondary reason to consider a Roth. The biggest reason is your personal goals. And are you short-funded for retirement, or are you overfunded for retirement? Some people might say, well, heck, I'm overfunded for retirement, but who cares? I don't have any lump sum goals. I'm going to throw it all in pre-tax.
Right. Well, what happens if that's the case, Dave, if someone has essentially overfunded their retirement but with pre-tax investments?
Well, if you don't plan to make any major lump sum purchases, it's not a big deal until that magical age of, Sarah, drum roll, please.
73.
Age 73, that's right, because at age 73, the government forces you to start taking.
That's when the piper calls up and says, hey, it's time to pay that bill that you didn't pay all those years.
If you've overfunded retirement, you retire in your 60s, and you don't take a ton of income, and then all of a sudden you get flooded with income at retirement, that could push you up into high enough tax brackets where it no longer makes sense. So that's why the decision, usually in earlier years, Sarah, people are putting pre-tax contributions in. Yeah. If you're making good income, you're in a decent bracket, put pre-tax contributions in. Now, if you're younger and you're in the 12% bracket, I would argue stick to the Roth in most cases, because you're only getting a 12% tax break. But if you're in a higher bracket than that, as you are, right, because you're successful and you're a go-getter, right, then pre-tax is what makes sense.
Right.
But as you get further on in life and you start to get lopsided, then that's when, sitting with a good income-based financial advisor to talk about, okay, how are you going to take income in retirement? Which buckets is it going to come from? And frankly, are you going to be overfunded on your pre-tax fund? That's analysis that has to get done maybe starting in your 50s.
Yep. And that's something we talk about a lot on the show, in addition to income, is that transition that you have to make. The investments that for someone my age in their 30s, the things that they need to be invested in are completely different when you near that 5 to 10 years out from retirement. You have to start making that transition. And you want to think about all of these different these tax items, because you don't want to end up with that tax time bomb that Dave mentioned, where you have too much in pre-tax investments and you are stuck with the bill.
Although when you're starting off, it's hard to do that. It's hard to get too much. With the cost of retirement today, you think about if somebody's making 70 grand today and they're your age, they're going to need, 200,000 to live the same lifestyle at retirement. So they need to accumulate several $1 million. So it's really hard to get overfunded. Yeah. But so the first goal is usually that pre-tax bucket. And then we make adjustments typically about the time kids get out of college.
Yep. Well, we are going to continue talking about all of the different ways that you can use tax deferral to your benefit to try to grow that bucket of money, of course, before the tax bill comes due. I'm Sarah Samuels here with David Scranton, and you're listening to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. Welcome back to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm Sarah Samuels here with David Scranton. And if you just paid the IRS a big tax bill, then you want to pay attention to today's show, because we are talking about the power of tax deferral and ways that you can grow your investments using deferral. So we just talked to a couple different Ask Dave listeners. They sent us their questions. Aaron, from a couple minutes ago, mentioned that he was contributing, he was maxing out his contribution to his 401k. Now, Dave, there are limits to how much you can contribute.
That's correct. There are limits on a regular 401k, limits on a Roth 401k, and usually $20,000+ depending upon your age is where the limit is. But what's interesting is if you're like Aaron, who had the after-tax 401k.
Right. He mentioned that he had some extra he wanted to put in that account.
Not just after-tax Roth. Roth is after-tax too. But after-tax, meaning it's not regular 401k, it's not Roth, you can actually put away, I believe, as much as almost $70,000 a year if you're a high enough income earner in that situation.
Okay, so that's only if you're a high enough income earner.
That's right.
Okay,
that's right. And but that gives you higher limits to put it away for the certain people that want to put after-tax money away. They've maxed out the pre-tax. They want to put after-tax money away, and they see the benefits of it still growing tax deferred, of getting tax deferral on the interest and dividends. And Sarah, with some plans that are really strong, what they actually do is have a conversion feature. Remember I said before, when you retire, you can take that after-tax money. I told Aaron, and you can move that, you can convert that after-tax money to a Roth IRA.
Right.
And because it's only the after-tax portion, there's really no taxes due.
Right.
Well, you can do a similar thing within some 401k. So let's say a 401k has pre-tax features, it has Roth features, and it has a regular after-tax version. You could take that after-tax version, put that $69,000 away. Let's say it grows to be worth $75,000 through the course of the year, right? Now, a year later, you can convert that into the Roth portion and pay taxes on only the $6,000 gain. So potentially, or $5,000 gain. So potentially, you put in that full $69,000 after tax. It grew a little bit. You pay tax on the small part, and now you convert it to the Roth. It's called a backdoor Roth conversion because you can't put that much in a 401k, but you can do that through the back door, much like, Sarah, like people do with IRAs. Some people who make too much money to do a Roth IRA contribution, what they'll do is they'll do an after-tax, non-deductible IRA, and then they'll convert that to a Roth because there are no income limits on Roth conversions.
Right. Well, there's a lot of different ways to defer the taxes and to make sure you're growing your accounts to the best of your abilities. I recommend working with an income specialist. They can help you with all of these different things. And you can always see our map of income specialists around the country by going to retirementincomesource.com and checking out that map. Let's get into our Ask Dave question. So this question comes from Frank in Georgia. He says, Dave, how do I keep my income low enough so I don't get stuck having to pay extra on Medicare Part B?
Well, Frank, the key is to keep your income under, it's roughly $200,000. We're just talking about the IRMA limitations, IRMA, where if you get over a certain income threshold, you have to pay higher premiums on that Medicare Part B. And the first threshold kicks in if you're single, slightly over $100,000. If you're married, slightly over $200,000. But I will tell you that I tell people not to stress too much over that because essentially it increases your tax bracket by maybe 2 or 2.5%. So it's not a big deal. Ultimately, you shouldn't let, as important as taxes are, you shouldn't let the tax tail wag the investment dog. In other words, if you need more income than that, you're single and you need more income than $100,000, or you're married, you want more income than $200,000, then if you have to pay an extra 2.5% tax, it's not a big deal. Right? But if you don't need that much, right, then it might be a good reason to do more Roth contributions, or maybe do some Roth conversions down the road, depending upon your age, or do some after-tax contributions. Why? Because, again, you only want to have as much in these pre-tax vehicles as you need to fulfill your retirement income desires. And if that puts you in the IRMA limits and you pay 2.5% more tax on your withdrawals, it's not that big of a deal. But if you don't need it, and it's in there, and then all of a sudden that magical age, as Sarah said in the last segment, age 73 comes along, and the government forces you to take required minimum distributions, then that extra 2.5% really hurts. So it hurts then, but it doesn't hurt so much if you want the income to live the retirement you always dreamt of. So again, those are the thresholds. I wouldn't let IRMA be the deciding factor because I always tell people, like I said before, don't let the tax tail wag the investment dog. So it may seem contradictory what we're talking about today. Tax deferral is huge, but again, those pre-tax items, those tax-deferred items are primarily there for money that's designed to generate income in retirement. And if you want that income, that 2.5% shouldn't be a big deal.
Yep. Frank, thank you so much for sending in your Ask Dave retirement question. And if any of our listeners have a question maybe about IRMA or maybe about other taxes that you've heard of coming up and you want to get an answer, all you have to do is send us an email to askdave@retirementincomesource. That's SOURCE.com. And we appreciate you spending some time here with us today on the Retirement Income Source, where it is all about the income. I'm Sarah Samuels here with David Scranton, and we're talking about ways that you can keep more of your income and your investments, especially using tax deferral. And there's a lot of power in tax deferral, especially when it comes to the accumulation phase. But Dave, what about someone that's 5 to 10 years out? What should their pre-tax versus their tax-free investments look like?
Well, that's where it's time to really do a deep dive in the tax diversification analysis. You know, people think about tax diversification based upon investments, right? I want to be diversified. I want to have some stocks, some bonds, some domestic, some international holdings. And that's investment diversification. But tax diversification is equally as important. Now, if you're 5 or 10 years out of retirement, hopefully you've gotten past the college years. Hopefully you don't have a lot of consumer debt. Maybe your only debt's your mortgage. So now it really comes down to that question of what your goals are in retirement, how much income you want to hit your needs, and then also what your lump sum goals are. You know, you may say, I have enough money, but I don't have time to use a vacation home right now, but in retirement, I'd like a second home. Great. Well, that's money that you need to be able to access without taking a huge tax bite out of it. Or if you want to buy an RV, or even to make sure you have enough to buy new vehicles periodically in retirement. Again, those are reasons to balance it out of it. So you definitely want to have some level of tax diversification. And if you're an extremely high tax bracket taxpayer, then there's more reasons to be diversified because now you're more susceptible to tax increases in the future.
Yep. Dave, why do you think that there's this myth out there? A lot of people tend to believe, oh, my tax bracket is going to go down in retirement. Why is that?
Well, part of it's because people are always taught that you can retire off 70% of your pre-retirement income. And some people say 60, some people say 80. People think they can retire on less income. And that's true if you want to have an unfulfilled retirement, right? And how do people come up with those rules of thumb, those numbers? Well, first of all, sometimes it is just a rule of thumb. They don't really give a lot of thought to it. And you read it somewhere and you believe it. The average person retires on 70%. Well, maybe that's because that's all the average person has.
Right? Absolutely, yeah.
But if you want to be above average, you got to think about, okay, what do I want to do in retirement? Yeah. So let's say you're making $100,000 right now.
Okay.
You have to figure out, okay, what expenses are going to go away in retirement? So I'm not going to contribute to my 401k anymore. I'm not going to pay any FICA taxes because FICA taxes are only charged on earned income when you go to work. Let's say I might have my mortgage paid off by then. I don't need to make the mortgage payment. So you may get down to a number whereby, okay, I'm making $100,000 now, but I only need $70,000 pre-tax in retirement. Gee, I'll pay less tax. But remember that retirement means you have more time on your hands.
Right.
More time means you're going to want to do more things, which means you're going to want to spend more money. And because you're going to want to spend more money, it means that you need to build back onto that $70,000. And for most people, they find that their income wants go right back to the same $100,000 they had before they retired, and in many cases, even more.
Yeah. Well, I think if people are planning to spend the next 30 years or more in retirement sitting in front of the television, then hey, maybe your income goals, your income needs are going to be a lot less. And then there's some years, Dave, I'm sure where people will need higher income goals. Like you said, if there's a lump sum goal that year, maybe you just need to spend more money versus other years. If you plan to travel early on in retirement versus maybe later on, you don't plan to travel so much. So it seems like you really need a plan that's very flexible and that can adapt to your circumstances.
And a plan that is built specifically for you, not some standard plan that's based on everybody else's goals, because you're unique. and
Right.
you have unique goals, and you've worked hard to put away money through the course of your lifetime, and now's the time for the money to work hard for you.
Yep. And that's why it's so important to us that you keep your hard-earned money. So coming up, we're going to talk a little bit more about some investments and ways that you can tax defer, what it should look like, especially if you're just a few years out from retirement and even in retirement. I'm Sarah Samuels here with David Scranton, and you're listening to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income.
And welcome back to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income. I'm David Scranton, here with Sarah Samuels, and today we're talking about the power of tax deferrals. I mentioned before, possibly the eighth wonder of the world. And whether you got a refund last week or whether you had to write a check, either way, tax deferral can be your best friend. So far we covered the two components of tax deferral that make it so powerful. First, getting deferral on your interest and gains every year, so you don't have to take money out of your investment pool just to pay taxes on the interest. Second, the power of having pre-tax contributions, such as in a 401k. But we also talked about some 401ks that have after-tax options. Perhaps you have a Roth 401k option, or perhaps you have a pure after-tax option that's not quite as good as a Roth, but allows you to put a lot more money away. We also discussed how it's really beneficial for people who need income, because if you need income, now you have not only your money sitting in there, but all that government money that eventually you're going to have to pay taxes on, but all that government money sitting there and generating income for you. And finally, the conversation about, how do you know when you're a little tax lopsided and you're not tax diversified enough?
Absolutely. Well, we were just talking about Roth conversions. Now, if you're someone that you're close to retirement and you realize, like Dave said, you're lopsided, you're pretty much forced into doing this Roth conversion, right, Dave?
Well, that's why when you asked me about somebody 10, 15 years out of retirement, I said, okay, well, now you just start putting money into the Roth 401k or in the after-tax 401k. You don't have to do a conversion because you planned well enough in advance. But you're right. If you're 2 years out of retirement and you have almost all your life savings sitting in a 401k, that's great. But again, what happens when you want to buy a car? Right. You have to withdraw $50,000. Well, guess what? You have to withdraw more like $75,000. Send a check to the government for $25,000, and you have $50,000 left over.
Right. It doesn't make sense if you have those lump sum goals.
That's right.
Yeah.
And ultimately, everyone has some lump sum goals. You do need to replace vehicles every once in a while. You do need to do work around your house, right? And if you're retired, do you want to be borrowing money and paying interest?
No, absolutely not. No. I don't think most people would.
And that's where Roth conversions come in. You hit the nail right on the head, Sarah, that if you're that close to retirement or you're retired and you find that you're tax lopsided, well, it's not too late to fix it. Yes, new contributions may not be significant enough to fix it, but this is where you need an in-depth Roth conversion analysis to figure out, okay, how do we start to convert little bits and pieces over every year from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA so I've got some tax-free money down the road. And sometimes there are opportunities there. Some people may retire at a certain age, but not take Social Security till age 70 so they can get the most out of it. Others may take Social Security, but they don't have to worry about required minimum distributions to age 73. So again, there's windows of time when people may be in a reasonable tax bracket that they can start to do Roth conversions and get more tax diversified.
That's why it's important, I think, to work with an income specialist so that you can make sure you're taking advantage of the right opportunities at the right time, especially for your situation. Now let's look at our Ask Dave question, because this is a good question. This has to do with people that maybe have lump sum goals, maybe even younger, in their younger age in retirement. So we have Shirley from North Carolina. She says, I know that all 401ks have the age restriction of 59 and a half where you can't take money out. But what if one of my goals is a lump sum goal and I will need the money before I turn age 59 and a half?
Okay. Well, Shirley, what you have to forego is the pre-tax component of it, right? Remember the two tax breaks? That number one, you don't have to pay taxes on the interest and gains from year to year. It gets to be deferred. And number two, that you want to put in pre-tax money. Well, the only way to have money accessible penalty-free before 59 and a half, especially for lump sum goals, is to have after-tax contributions. Now, you can still get tax deferral. You can still get tax deferral on your interest and gains, but you have to make after-tax contributions. So, what are some examples there? Well, one example is if you make Roth IRA contributions, you can take your principal out tax-free at any time. So now it kind of waters down the benefits of Roth IRAs, but let's say you make Roth IRA contributions, you get a lot of tax-free growth. Yes, if you dip into the growth, you have to pay a penalty, but you can always take your cumulative contributions out tax-free. The same surely is true for non-qualified annuities. If you put a non-qualified annuity in there, you get penalties if you take out the interest, but principal is potentially tax-free. So that's important to understand. Life insurance lets your money grow tax-free. Some people will do an overfunded cash value life insurance policy where they dump a bunch of money into the life insurance. They overfund it so they build extra cash value, in which case that cash value can be accessible tax-free before age 59 and a half. And no, you don't have to surrender the policy to get it. Okay? Or if you've got kids that are going to be going to college, or you think they might be going to college, a 529 college tuition plan, again, can allow you to get tax-deferred growth on your interest and gains from year to year. And in that case, allow you to take the gains out tax-free also. So again, there's a bunch of ways if you have goals, lump sum goals or whatever before age 59 and a half, that you can still get one of the two benefits of tax deferral.
Shirley, we hope that helps answer your question. And thank you so much for sending in your Ask Dave email. If any of our listeners or YouTube viewers have a question that you would like Dave to answer, potentially on a future show, all you have to do is send us a message, send it to our email, askdave@retirementincomesource, SOURCE.com. Thank you for spending some time here with us today on the Retirement Income Source, where it is all about the income. And we are talking about the power of taxes, especially when it comes to deferring taxes in certain investments and ways that you can take advantage of these different options to really maximize your income. Now, Dave, you just answered a question a few moments ago from Shirley, who said, hey, I have a lump sum goal. I want to spend some money. It's going to happen before age 59 and a half. A 401k would really not be a good option for her at all to fund that type of lump sum goal, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Unless she has reason to believe, gosh, I'm not going to stay with one employer for very long. I can do after-tax money, in which case that after-tax money is accessible when you leave. Yeah. But as a general rule, that's not a good idea. But the point I want to make is people don't realize that on Roth IRAs and on annuities, for example, if you make early distributions before 59 and a half, that 10% penalty is only on the interest and gains. It's not on the principal. So you still get some benefits there. So if you think you need the money longer term, and that's why that's the reason you do an annuity or you do a Roth IRA, just like a 401k, but you realize, wait a minute, I need the money earlier. I was wrong. It may not be the end of the world.
You're saying, Dave, you don't have to, you only are going to be responsible for paying taxes on the interest and the gains, like what you've made.
And the 10% penalty for early withdrawal, correct?
Right, 10%, but not the principal, what you invested with.
That's
okay,
right.
So it's not as big of a problem as it could be.
If you think all your money's long-term, you need it long-term, and oops, I made a mistake, I need it sooner, it may not be the end of the world. But again, then there are things where you can access the money and some of the gains without taxes, right? The 529 plans.
Right.
You can access that, and it grows tax deferred, and you can access it tax-free if it's used for higher education. Life insurance, cash value life insurance, you can withdraw your cumulative contributions tax-free, and then you can leverage it. You can borrow against it. And some policies, what they'll do is they'll lend you money, and they'll charge you a certain interest rate, let's call it 8%. And they'll hold your money as collateral, and they'll credit your policy with 8%. So it's kind of sort of like an interest-free loan you never have to repay. So again, there are ways to get tax deferral that don't necessarily require you committing to age 59 and a half.
Yeah. Now, Dave, what if you're one of our listeners and maybe you've been slacking and you have a lot of money sitting in those pre-tax investments, and you know that the piper is going to come calling soon, just a couple years, you haven't done anything about it. What is your best advice?
Well, it depends. If you have some after-tax money, it's not a big deal, right? So it sounds like in your example, you're saying, no, they don't have a lot.
No.
But remember, after-tax money doesn't mean Roth IRAs. It could mean money in the bank. It could be money in a brokerage account, money that you can access, just in a normal fashion. But let's say you have most of it. You had $1 million sitting in your 401k, and you have 50 grand in the bank as an emergency fund. Well, that's when you need to really look into a Roth conversion analysis. Which now CPAs can do a Roth conversion analysis in most cases. The only problem with CPAs is often they're not good at that retirement income planning. So I find that, Sarah, a retirement income planning specialist is the best choice, who does some tax planning, has tax software, because that person can help you figure out how much income you want in retirement based upon your goals. and what you might want for income at various stages of retirement. And with that knowledge, probably get a more accurate depiction of your tax brackets in retirement. So now you can do, I believe, a more accurate Roth conversion analysis.
Yep. Well, work with an income specialist. It's a great way to help make sure that you have a retirement that's fulfilling and that you're not paying too much in taxes. So thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you'd like to watch or listen to the show again, maybe send it to your friends and family. All you have to do is go to retirementincomesourceradio.com, and all of our past episodes are there.
And most importantly, we hope that you join us right here next week, same time, same station. I'm David Scranton, here with Sarah Samuels, and this is the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about the income.